Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Scarlet Witch. This video is going to be relatively quick since I mostly focus on Scarlet Witch's performance in PvE. I see what she can do as a baseline with no damage proc, and then I end up taking her all the way to tier 4 and equipping a mighty CTP of Rage to see how much she improves. Because I ended up equipping a proc on her, I didn't really test her in timeline, especially because she doesn't have iframe ignore, but because she does have invincible on her 5th skill for a pretty long duration, and because she has penetration natively in her kit, I did test her out a little bit in Alliance Conquest with an invincible obelisk before I equipped the mighty CTP of Rage, just to see what she is capable of for people that want to potentially use her for PvP and don't really care about PvE in general. The baseline test was to take her into a stage 29 of Null, no leadership or support, so I'm not utilizing her own leadership. And surprisingly enough, for a native tier 2 character with no damage proc, she actually didn't finish this too quickly. For the most part, the characters that I've tested recently that do well in PvE usually finish this with about 2 minutes left. She did it with about 1 minute and 20 seconds left roughly, which is still good, but not really so much ahead as some of the other characters that have come out. I also took her into a stage 74 of Mephisto, this time utilizing her leadership and supports. She obviously couldn't complete this without a damage proc. She was about 1 minute slow from completing the first phase to be able to complete the entire fight, but it gives you an idea of her performance at this level and how much she will improve once she gets to level 80 and tier 4. If you want to build the character exclusively for PvE, which is probably what I would recommend for her since she does gain a significant improvement when you use a damage proc on her, as you'll see in the following clips, I would probably go with a CTP of Rage first and foremost because she has a ton of value in ABX and ABL. Outside of that, you can also use something like a CTP of Judgment and even a CTP of Energy or Destruction because she is proc friendly and does element damage. Just keep in mind that if you're wondering between a Judgment and a Rage will be the ideal option for things like ABX and ABL, will give you a clear advantage over a Judgment. A CTP of Rage is also more ideal for her because she has guaranteed crit in her kit now, and if you're talking about mighty versions of the CTPs, it's easier just to spam the CTP of Rage and get the top proc off, whereas for something like the Judgment, the Energy, and the Destruction, you have to move around to get the top proc off, and that will waste time in your rotations. And besides that, if you're using a CTP of Energy or Destruction, it might be a little bit hard to time your procs with the ultimate skill because you kind of have to go directly into your rotation again. You can't really wait after you use the ultimate skill because it does the lingering damage after, which can totally mess up your procs. With the level 80, you can see that she got about 1 minute and 30 second improvement on this stage, and on the Mephisto stage, she was able to complete the first phase about 1 minute faster, which is the kind of ideal timing for her to be able to complete the fight entirely, which she did with about 15 seconds left roughly. If or when you decide to tier 4 Scarlet Witch, you'll notice that her stat bump isn't really anything too significant. She gets about 10,000 energy attack. Her HP does get a pretty sizable increase. It goes up by around 38,000, but if you're not really going to be utilizing her in PvP, it doesn't matter too much. And in PvE, she has a ton of other survival stuff, so you don't really need to value that too much. Unlike the stat bump, the tier 4 skill is actually quite nice for her. She gains about a 60% damage increase to all of her skills that gets reduced as time goes on, but also gains a 20% active buff increase. So this also increases the damage increase from the tier 4 skill as well as every other active buff throughout her kit. What's also nice is that the instinct type matches Thor's, which Thor, being one of the top PvE strikers, will be the most ideal for her because it will give her the maxed tier 4 skill as well as adding a ton of damage and score in ABX and ABL when he frequently comes out to do his attack. You can see that with the tier 4 upgrade, I was able to complete the same stage about 2 minutes faster. Keep in mind again that this is with no damage proc. On the final test I did, I equipped a mighty CTP of Rage, and she was able to complete the same stage about 1 minute and 30 seconds faster, or within about 1 minute and 15 seconds outright. When I took her into Giant Boss Raid, she didn't seem to do as well as Quicksilver did, even though she seems to be more oriented for PvE. I was still able to solo the boss, but I did so within about 4 minutes, or with around 6 minutes left roughly. She seems to be one of those characters that does okay at level 70 and 80, but the tier 4 upgrade is really where she gets a massive increase. You can see in this fight again, without a damage proc, but just going to tier 4 alone, I was able to complete the fight about a minute and 20 seconds faster. And although I did mention on the Mephisto test that she basically was able to complete that stage about a minute and 30 seconds faster, in reality it is closer to 2 minutes faster with that mighty CTP of Rage, since the fight on the Mephisto stage ended pretty quickly and didn't kind of reveal the exact time improvement that she gets from it. She gets a pretty significant improvement from the mighty CTP of Rage because you can cancel so many different skills, pretty much all of them, and get the benefit of that proc applying to all of those skills at once. And you'll see the massive benefit that that has specifically in modes like ABX and ABL, where it seems like characters that can basically cancel all of their skills at once gain the most benefit from something like a mighty CTP of Rage. That's likely why characters like Magneto perform so well, and likely why Scarlet Witch will perform even better if I were to upgrade her to a brilliant CTP of Rage. As for the rotation, you basically just cancel through all of your skills and finish off with the 4th skill at the end. I usually do a 2, cancel 1, cancel 3, cancel 5 into the 4th skill, and when I have my ultimate skill, I usually open with that, delay cancel after she hits the ground, and then do the same rotation. As for the tier 4 skill, you want to basically use that right before you go into your main rotation, and in terms of canceling your skills, you don't have to delay cancel any of your skills, though keep in mind that if you do cancel too quickly, you won't get the hits from some of the skills or the animations starting, so you kind of want to figure out a rhythm where you go kind of like piano keys through the rotation, where you go through it at a quick enough pace where you don't cancel your skills, but you don't go too slow where the chain hit will drop and you don't get the accumulating number of hits and damage that you would be. The character is undoubtedly the most valuable for ABX and ABL, and is likely where most people will be using her, since she satisfies the restrictions for Universal Hero Days and Universal Hero Female Days in ABX, as well as Universal Female Days for ABL. She also has all of the cancel effects for ABX and ABL, with the exception of Shock, I believe, for one of the ABL seasons. The character is also incredibly easy to get a high score with and play because, like I said, you basically just spam through all of your skills and then just wait a little bit for them to come back off cooldown before doing it again. You can see that even at level 80 without a damage proc and a pretty basic build on her, I don't have any Odins at all, I was still able to reach almost 10 million. Like I mentioned, the tier 4 will give you a significant increase, not only because the striker comes out so frequently to add to the score, but also because the tier 4 skill is pretty good in itself. And with it, I was able to increase my score by about 2 million and almost reach 12 million, again without a damage proc. With the mighty CTP of Rage equipped, however, I was able to improve my score by 3.3 million, or roughly around 3 million, which is actually quite interesting because most of the testing that I've done with other characters shows that their improvement with the mighty CTP of Rage is roughly anywhere from 1.5 million to 2 million, but it seems that characters that can basically cancel and spam all of their skills at once do benefit the most from a CTP of Rage and reforged versions of it. As you go up to mighty and a brilliant CTP of Rage, the improvement will be greater for these characters, it seems, because, like I mentioned earlier, all of the skills benefit from the proc, the top proc and the bottom proc of the CTP of Rage at once, because they're all applied at the same time when the proc is active. And for this reason, I was actually able to get all of the rewards on the ABL day for her restriction, the Universal Female, going all the way up to 12 billion, again with a pretty basic build. I just have the mighty CTP of Rage, I don't have any Odins, and I don't even have the artifact for Satana. For the people that don't care about her performance in PvE, she does have some value in things like Alliance Conquest. She obviously won't be used in Timeline because she doesn't have the meta stats or mechanics for that. She doesn't have Revive, Immortal, and things like that, or the iframe Ignore. But in Alliance Conquest, she does open with her 5th skill, which gives her about 7 seconds of Invincible, as well as being a full iframe. So she can potentially burst down the opponents fairly quickly there, and because she often just spams the 5th skill, she'll frequently stay invincible even after they potentially revive. Keep in mind that for these tests, I was using an Invincible Obelisk for the main reason that if they do end up reviving and she isn't able to go into the 5th skill fast enough, she won't gain the Invincible, so you still want to have that layer of protection when she can't activate her own protections. So at the very least, even if you do end up going with the damage proc like a Rage, she should be able to, at the very least, wipe some mid-level characters or revive characters, even if she can't survive herself. For the mid-level characters that you use her against, she doesn't necessarily need a damage proc, she seems to perform fine without it, so if you're really focusing on making her PvP, I would probably recommend either going with something like an Authority, a Regen, possibly Conquest if you have those to spare, or any other kind of CTP that gives her an added layer of protection to be annoying versus the opponents. If you're not focused on PvE at all, I wouldn't really recommend her, even though you can get some value out of her in Alliance Conquest, mostly because of the potential PvP characters that could be meta that are coming up. There is the potential that Doom might be getting a tier 4, and it seems like Mr. Fantastic and some of the other Fantastic Four characters also have a PvP kit, so they could be quite good and obviously better than Scarlet Witch in things like Alliance Conquest, and maybe Timeline, depending on what kind of artifact they get. However, if you're obviously focusing on PvE, specifically ABX and ABL, I would highly recommend her because she is so easy to play and easy to get a high score with. I personally upgraded her to tier 4, mostly so I could have another day where I could have a chance to get those tier 4 materials, and I didn't really have to invest much in Scarlet Witch's build to be able to get that, as opposed to some other characters where I would have to have equipped a Brilliant Rage. I obviously didn't have to do that for her. And for players who don't have a good universal character, they could also utilize her for the ABX day that is the universal hero. She doesn't really have too much usage in War Boss Legend in terms of the restrictions, so the main focus would be for ABX and ABL, but I would say that she is pretty good with that if you can get her to tier 4. If you can't, then I would probably hold off on her until you can get enough materials for that. That pretty much does it for this one. As I said, this was a fairly quick one, but I wanted to get it out of the way since there seems to be a lot of stuff to test with the next update, and I wanted to focus on that so I could get those videos out a little bit faster than I did these previous ones with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Although Father's Day is coming up this next weekend, and I will be busy the weekend after, so I'm gonna see where I can squeeze in these videos, but bear with me, I will try to get them out as soon as I can. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others. It can potentially help them out, and as I've always said, it definitely helps me out. I appreciate people taking the time to watch these. Thank you, but the video is now over.